Stuart, we start. How's training been with the team this week?
It's been good. I think, understandably, I think people will see the logic that our focus has been on what we want to do when we don't have possession of the ball. That's been a real centre of attention for us. We know that there's, over the last 2 weeks as it's been, of fixtures, that we've come up short in a number of elements. But I think for me the foundation always has to be what you're doing when you don't have the ball. That'll give you a base for building into a game of football, being competitive in a game of football, and then the players understand that, they know that, and that's not been something that we've not been doing, if that makes sense. But it really becomes a centre of attention to arrest a situation where you're losing needless goals, you're making poor errors of judgment, you're finding different ways to concede goals, and from my side, at the coach's point of view, the coaching staff here, it's instilling that confidence and that belief and that realisation that that's been something that we've been pretty good at for a period of time this season. For several months this season we've been pretty good at it, so it's finding that catalyst to make sure that that's our very foundation in any game of football, whether that's Celtic as it is this weekend or any opponent.
Do you feel like you saw some of that in the second half against Falkirk? You had the goal, you had the two disallowed ones. Do you think there were positives to take from that second half? Yeah, there probably is in the cool light of day. Obviously I'm angry after the game. We've all got personal pride. I speak about myself. I'm a competitor. I want to win. We all say that really cheaply and really loosely now. You stand there, pump the fist and saying that I'm a terrible loser. I'm a terrible loser. I think anybody in this environment probably should be, and if you're not, then you find yourself in the wrong industry. But as I say, in the cool light of day, you start to look at elements of the second half. That played out how I would have believed that the first half should have played out in many aspects. You're obviously playing against a good team, so there's always respect there. But yeah, I think what we have to realise is that side of it's not all right. It's not okay just to show a reaction when you're 3-0 down in a game needlessly, and inviting scenarios that shouldn't be the case. So yeah, from my side, there was good performances. There was a lot of plus points. You rightly mentioned you've got the ball in the net a couple of times. Maybe if you score quickly after your first goal, or you score early in the second half, the dynamic of the game changes. But again, I'm always trying to be brutally honest. My message at half time was that we had to stop the bleeding. It was as simple as that. We did. We started to show much more composure in our attack. I think we controlled the second half, same way we did against Aberdeen. We carved out opportunities, but that's not really what we're talking about from the start of the game. It needs to be a different narrative. It needs to be a different story for the start of the game. When you're going through this kind of spell that you're having with the results that you're having, how important a role does leadership play, not just from you and your staff, but from your senior players on the pitch as well? Listen, it's big, and I'm never shifting any blame just solely onto the players. My job is to make sure that the senior players, the experienced players, experience, as I always say, comes from games played. It doesn't just necessarily come from age. That they feel an environment where they can speak and they can express themselves, and we all speak about how the game's changed and all the rest of it. I think so often it's just making sure that you demand a standard. So for example, if something's happening to us in a game of football in a particular area of pitch, we should be in a position where we rectify it, and I think the easiest place to start is from the players. When we know it, we see it, we experience it, and that can be overloading a side, making sure that you get extra cover into a particular area. It can be exposing the opposition if you feel they're weak in a certain area. But for that we have to communicate, and for that we have to drive those standards. Sometimes we fall out. I'm very much for a generation in a couple of dressing rooms where falling out, arguing, fighting was normal. It was normal, and the other part of that is that can't be taken as an offence either, and that's something that we've not had to speak about too much until the last 2 weeks, but we have. I think making sure that if you fall out with somebody for the right reason, and there's a bit of detail and a bit of information there, I always believe we go and sit beside each other in the lunchroom after it, and we get an understanding of, and we've seen this willingness to get better, to improve, to stop conceding goals, and as I say, sometimes that can spill over into being
being slightly aggressive in how you come across and demanding standards of those round about you. Disagreements, it's life, that's what happens. But for me, it's always what happens next, and that's not to spill over into something that becomes this drama. I always tell a story, I think it was a couple of years ago, in a situation whereby there was a bit of an argument in training, and being the manager of a club and coming back into the stadium after it, and the talk was almost as if there had been this enormous drama, and it was literally words exchanged by players. So I find that really difficult to comprehend from, you know, somebody that doesn't watch soap operas and somebody that doesn't watch reality programmes and all that type of stuff. Sometimes you call somebody out, sometimes they're disgruntled by a decision you've made in the pitch. That's okay. It's about how you move on and understanding what the correct outcome is on it, and as I say, my job's to make sure that we encourage that environment, but always in the right way. And I think that'll help you if you lose a goal in a game of football. I think that'll help you if you're up against it in a game of football.
I know they're not directly comparable, but you had a difficult spell with Motherwell. I think it was 2023 in the kind of autumn of that period. What did you learn from that you can take into these results that come on if we're going through just now? I think what you learn is that sometimes that you prioritise the wrong things as a coach and a manager, and all I mean by that is, you know, if you're in bad form, I think sometimes your hope and your will is that you come out the other side of that and your next game's a 4-0 victory. I don't often believe that that's the case. Sometimes I think that you have to gain those small marginal gains. Essentially, you need to identify first what's wrong. You need to continually work at it, because I don't think that we ever get better at anything by doing it less. So by pretending that there's not a problem in a particular area, pretending there's something that's not hurting you in a game of football, you're missing the issue. And it's also not just to identify what the issue is. It's to, as I say, it's to work on it, to practice it, to, you know, get it wrong again in the training pitch and continue to get better at it. And that's always been my philosophy. Work hard. We all say that. We all tell everybody we work hard. But it's to make sure that that's really specific to the next game as well. You know, from me to just start saying that we have to pass the ball better, that we have to create more opportunities, yeah, we'll need to do that. But I don't think that's the first place that you start. I don't think that becomes your foundation, as I say, for your next result or your next positive outcome. So I think it's just getting to that as quickly as you can. You know, be humble in your approach as well. Don't believe that you're doing things better than you actually are. And I'm not so sure I learnt that at that point. It's something I believe in. Again, it's just making sure that everybody buys into that you have that sort of no ego, humble, because when you let that guard down, it gives you an opportunity to improve and get better.
Is there any team news ahead of Sunday, Stuart?
Pretty much the same as we were. I just looked at it again there, obviously doing our numbers for this morning. We've got 9 senior players out. It's as simple as that. It's a big number, and I think from that, sometimes it's not just about having 9 senior players out. It's by the nature of the injuries, the timescales and things like that. So that's where we are. But it's no surprise to me sitting here today. I think that's the other aspect of it. We understand who can train. We understand who's going to be available, and from that you devise a plan and a real certainty, hopefully, in your group of what you want to be, who's going to play, as we always do, who will be maybe supporting off the bench. So there's no great surprises to it. I think it's embracing it, understanding it, and cracking on with your job.
We also seen Toby play the last 2 games, Aberdeen and Falkirk.
Yep.
What's the goalkeeper situation at the moment? I know there's been a few things floating around the media and stuff. Is Eddie Beach going to start on Sunday? I'm
not going to tell you who's going to start the game, quite clearly. Sitting here, you know, a couple of days before we play, but you'll not need to be a rocket scientist to understand that Toby won't be able to play against Celtic, and Celtic have been great. Toby's been really good coming in on that emergency loan in a situation we didn't foresee. But yeah, I've already said that I trust Eddie Beach. He's here as a permanent goalkeeper. He's younger in years and experience, but he's somebody that we absolutely believe has the credentials to be a really good goalkeeper. So yeah, there's no massive secret in, you know, who will be available for us. I would envisage, and you'll see a situation where Corey Armour will be recalled from his loan at Celtic Hearts to ensure that he's one of the 2 goalkeepers available to us. And then out with that, you know, a simple message of you relate back to probably stories and aspects that you read. We're always looking to try try and see if we can strengthen. We're always asking questions to see if we can be the best possible version. I think you've seen that with Tyrese John Jules coming into the group. Once you've had an unforeseen injury, we're trying to see if there's another option we can bring into a certain area of the pitch. So safe to say we've been doing that, but there also has to be willingness from players and clubs and everyone else to make sure that it's right for them and it fits them, because you're not going to have necessarily, and we would be the exact same, you're not going to have clubs banging down other clubs' doors to say, can you take this player off us? Everyone looks after themselves, and rightfully so, that's the game, that's the nature of the beast. But no, we'll have two goalkeepers available to us at the weekend, one to start, one to sit on the bench, and then what happens, it's kind of a moving situation, to be honest with you, with the situation we found ourselves in.
And facing Celtic, what do you expect from a Martin O'Neill Celtic side on Sunday?
Yeah, I think I've been fortunate enough to see their games. We prepared to play against Falkirk, so I seen Martin's first game in temporary charge there at Celtic against Falkirk. We're looking at Falkirk more than we were Celtic. Watched the game last night, watched the game at the weekend. I think there's so many similarities. I think what you find is you've got a group of players that understand what they've been doing for a number of years. I think you can see little tweaks in different parts that the likes of Martin, Sean, Steve McManus and Mark Fotheringham have put on. They'll all have a little stamp and a thought process of elements that they want to tweak. Things have changed a little bit for them with one or two injuries as well. There's a couple of guys missing, which sometimes changes the profile of the player. But you're going to Celtic Park to play against the team that have done nothing but win trophies over the last number of years. There's a lot of guys that are in that team that have experienced it. So still, to my mind, I think you've got the toughest task this weekend of playing against a team that very rarely lose and very rarely concede goals at home. So it's a big task, but it's one that we relish.
And the last time Kilmarnock faced Celtic, ran them pretty close to the last minute penalty. Is that something that you used with the players to show them?
It is, but different manager, different coaching staff, there'll be different personnel on the pitch, so we'll need to look at elements of that, because I think Celtic will play a similar way, as I've already just said there. But the fact that you now go away from home changes the dynamic of the game. You're playing on a different surface. Celtic have played on Thursday there. Does that change their team selection? There's a lot of different factors that come into their thought process, but there can't be too many that come into mine, to be honest with you. We've had 8 days to prepare to go into the game, so we need to centre on what we want to do and how we want to go about the game. We did that against them. We ran them very close, as you rightly say. Fought in the last 10 minutes of the game. We looked the stronger team. I thought we looked like the team that were going to win the game. So we'll take positives for that, but we also have to be about the kind of here and now. We'll also have to be aware of where we've been recently, how we can improve that, and making sure that we set our stall out to be really competitive in the game.
You talk about focusing on how you set up and how you are without the ball. Is this kind of one of those games where that's generally has to be the focus anyway? Can that almost help focus the players' minds as well? I
know where you're coming from, Gav, but no, I think off the back of the last 2 weeks, 4 games as it's been, we have to, it doesn't matter who we're playing this week, that we have to reset. We have to go and try and see if we can instill a little bit more confidence and a wee bit more clarity in decision making within certain situations. I just go back to it that whoever we're playing, that needs to be kind of set in stall. You need to set your stall out that way. But when you're playing against Celtic, I take your point, when you're playing against Celtic at Celtic Park, then for me, most if not every single team in this division will understand that you'll have less of the ball. So I think that you have to prepare that way. I've always said that. I think that has to be something at the forefront of your mind, and I think there is a real emphasis on when you do have it, you need to use it very well. Otherwise you expose yourself and you put yourself in really difficult situations. So that's been a lot of the thought process. Does it take care of itself? In many ways that thought process does, but making sure you're getting it right during the week to try and take that from practice into the actual game is something that we're trying to centre on.
One of the things Martin O'Neill has said, even before he got the job and since then, is talked about he'd maybe prefer a bit more physicality in the Celtic team, and maybe last night showed that a wee bit. Is that something you have to take advantage of when you get set pieces, corners, etc. as well? Is that going to be a focus for you as well?
Yeah, I don't know. I think again, being brutally honest, I think when you play against Celtic, that's sometimes something that a lot of teams will look at. I think sometimes physically you look as they stand, that they're maybe not the tallest. You take out the two centre backs, and for the last couple of years you go around the rest of their team and you think that you might gain an advantage somewhere. But if I'm being honest, it's not been an Achilles heel of theirs. It's not been something that you look at every single week where Celtic concede from dead ball situations. And I think what that probably shows you is that over years, not just in the last couple of weeks, that there's a lot of guys there that maybe don't stand 6'4", but they take responsibility. They've got good levels of concentration. But like any game of football, if you get a dead ball situation, we need good quality in our delivery. We need to try and be quite inventive in what we're trying to do. And you know, I've been fortunate over the years that we've managed to capitalise over that on occasion. But there's also been times where Celtic have stood up to that test. So it's nothing different from what they'll have faced over a number of years. So from that side, it probably just becomes a normal game and a normal thought process to me.